Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Internal Compass podcast, the podcast where I, your host, Samuel Archambault, osteopath and kinesiologist, try his best to help you be more realigned from inside out. This week, I want to share with you a personal experience that I'm going to tie up to a process that you might have to go through, and that is recovering from an injury. So, just to put you in context, this week, no later than 2 days ago now, I had a minor, not an injury, but more of a surgery on my ankle, my right ankle. This has been actually lasting for some time. This injury occurred 5 years ago now. I fell down when I was rock climbing. And since then, my right ankle has been okay. I have been able to play sports and to exercise and to walk and everything, but there has been this kind of a little extra bony and cartilage section of my tibia that has been impairing my range of motion. So, long story short, 2 days ago, the surgeon removed that little part, and now, after some rehabilitation, I should be able to move better my ankle, so my feet in general. But also, in the long run, I hope that this is going to help me reduce the kind of constant swelling that I've been having now for some time. Okay, so what all of that has to do with going through an injury? Well, I'm going to use my own example to share with you my own way of dealing with that specific surgery, because that it would be the same kind of process that you could use yourself if you are going through an injury, kind of an acute injury. And how do you get back up from there? So, first of all, before we go there, let's talk a little bit more about prevention. And I know for myself, kind of was hard to prevent it because the operation was planned. But I could actually prepare myself. And that has everything to do with very general, but still very important things and factors. The goal there is to make ourselves as resilient as possible when we are preparing ourselves, or let's say we're making ourselves as resilient as possible to reduce the risk of injury. And of course, that has many different factors. But first of all, how we can do that, especially using movement. Today, I want to talk more specifically about how can we use movement to do that. Well, there are specific drills that we can do. Right. First of all, mobility exercises are a great way to allow your body to express itself in its natural range of motion and to become strong in those ranges of motion. So, mobility training is not only about flexibility training, although being flexible doesn't necessarily translate into a reduced risk of injury. But that being said, if you're more flexible, you will be able to tolerate more range of movement. And normally, when there is some kind of an injury, like my injury that happened 5 years ago, I fell down and my ankle went into a lot more range of motion than it was used to, and therefore something broke. Because when the force of a joint is kind of, the force of a specific fall or an injury goes above what your body can kind of resist and absorb, then something else has to kind of absorb that shock. And for me, it was bones. So that's not really what we want. But you could also have an injury where your muscles would absorb that force and maybe tear a part of the muscles. It could be also ligaments or tendons. So there are plenty of options here. So basically, the more resilient you are, the more capable you are to, one, being flexible, and two, being mobile, so being able to move into different range of motion. Not only that, but also the strength that you can have in using those range of motion. So example, it's one thing to be able to lift your arm overhead, but it's also another thing to be able to maintain a weight overhead into a way that you're stabilized and that you can use your core and that your shoulder is not wobbling left and right. So you see here that mobility training is, of course, really important when it comes to injury prevention. Of course, it helps, to make your joint more smooth. Also, just to help the overall health of your joint, it will make it with a little bit more liquid in there. It's going to help to vascularize it, so bring a bit more blood also to the muscles around it. So all of those things are really important. Something else you could do to prevent is, especially injuries, is to use cardiovascular exercise. What I mean by that is the more you're able to move your blood around your body, the more you're able to carry nutrients, carry your immune system all around your body, so that if ever there's something happening, well, you have the nutrients, you have the capacity to repair that area as fast as possible. Actually, longevity and health span in general has been linked with the more you're able to create new small blood vessels. Well, guess what? The more you're able to bring nutrients over there, and the more alive and the more healthy you're going to become. So using cardiovascular exercise is a great way also to not prepare yourself, but more to prevent yourself in limiting your risk of injury. Okay, so that has been on the movement side of preparation. What else can you do if you don't know you're going to have an injury, but you want to prepare yourself no matter what? Well, you can build yourself a very solid mentality. And me, I had kind of the luck that I knew that my surgery was coming. So in that way, I have decided when I took the decision, okay, I'm going to do the surgery, well, I decided, okay, how can I build my mentality? How can I, build my thought around the fact that this is going to happen? I decide that it's going to happen, and I want to put all of the chances on my side, right? I want to use my own mentality, my own philosophy around my rehabilitation to see this as an opportunity. So that was a lot of internal work. I used journaling, I used meditation. It doesn't really matter the specific tool that you want to use for that, as long as you're able to build yourself some kind of a shield, and not only a hard shield, but a shield that is resilient, and that whatever will be thrown at you, you will be able to take, analyze, dissect, and grow better from it. As an example, I knew that when after my surgery, there is going to be a time that I'm going to feel bored. I will not be able to go to the gym as much. All of my life is going to be slower. So I need to work on that. I need to prepare myself mentally. So using tools like meditation or visualizations is a great way to kind of project yourself in those situations and then think, okay, what am I going to do at that time that I'm going to feel bored, or I'm going to feel in pain, or no matter what the challenge is for you? But if you can picture yourself in the situation you're going to face, and then you can also picture yourself how you're going to react to that. So have already some kind of a pre-made solution. So, for me, I decided that I'm still going to work out, but I'm going to, of course, reduce and adapt to what I can do, right? And not to limit the healing of my ankle. So see that preparing yourself, even if you don't know if you're going to have an injury or not, there's always a way to constantly be ready that if something happens, you want to prevent, right? You want to prevent an injury. And not only that, but you want to be ready that if something happens, all of a sudden, one injury doesn't destroy your entire identity. You'll be able to progress faster and better in your rehabilitation, and also especially your mental health is not going to be so much affected. Of course, it's different, right? Of course, right now I have difficulty to walk around here. I need to use my crutches. So is it ideal? Of course not. Is it hard on the mental state? Of course it is. But if you ask yourself empowering questions, that's another great tool you can use. If you ask yourself empowering questions such as, what can I do now? That I have this injury, this surgery, whatever. What can I do now that I did not have time for when I was injury free? Right now, I have a lot of time because I'm not moving around all the time. I cannot do all of the things that I used to do before. It's just physically not possible for now. Of course, the more my rehabilitation is going to go forward, then the better will that be. But then I have more time to do other projects, like learning my Finnish or working on specific projects that I've been kind of just tossing to the side. So you see, there's always an opportunity when things are not necessarily the way we want them to be. Maybe we get injured, we have a surgery that we kind of slows us down, but slowing us down or not allowing us to do a specific thing is very relative. what if you see this as an opportunity that, hey, now I have time to do this. Now I'm kind of forced to slow down so I can actually enjoy doing those tasks that I told myself, oh, later. Now is the perfect time. So this is all a prevention side, let's say, of what can you do, or especially how can you perceive your life and your situation in a way that you are going to be ready no matter what. Of course, now I don't want to dive too deep into lifestyle habits, but this is kind of obvious. The better your sleep, if you can manage your stress, if your nutrition is, full of nutrients and very protein dense and very limited in ultra processed food, well, of course, all of those factors, social life, having good friends over, those are all very important, and that kind of fall into the category of a healthy lifestyle in general. So I would say that the more you can invest in your general health, like as a habit, that is definitely going to help you be a more resilient person when or if that kind of an injury happens. So this is great if you want to use movement or other specific strategies to prevent yourself to get some kind of an injury. So we talked about mobility training. We talked about cardiovascular exercise at a low intensity, just to bring more oxygen, more nutrients, more blood flow, especially to everywhere in your body. We talked about flexibility training. And then also we talked about all of the other categories that you can put in for your healthy lifestyle to kind of make you more resilient. And at last, of course, we discussed about your mentality to constantly be flexible and ready, that if your entire life changes because of one event, that doesn't define you, but it gives you opportunity. That's for the preventative side. Now, what if we want to deal with it? What if we want to not now where we can't prevent something happen, right? You got injured, you have this surgery, something happened, and you need to be able to treat. You need to be able to have strategies to treat this pain. So what do we do then? Well, let's start with, again, movement. There are plenty of things that we can do to use movement at our own advantage. And for me, that's what I've decided to do with this whole rehab thing. Well, before my operation, I talked with a physiotherapist. I even made myself I'm in the field, so it was kind of easier that way, but I was already prepared. I already had a plan for my rehab done, not a very rigid plan, but something that is flexible and that would allow me to, compose with that. But at least I had something that it was all organized so that now that the surgery happened, okay, I know I just have to stick to the plan. And if needed, I need to adapt it, but at least I have something to follow through. And that rehab plan, of course, is progressive. It starts very slow. Using movement to treat pain is not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to go the more the better. It's more the quality and the specific things you're going to do. So if for you, your pain depends on or is more related to a lack of mobility or your posture, well, of course, there are exercises you can do to correct that. And just as a general rule of thumb, if you are pretty inactive and you don't move as much, generally speaking, a little bit more movement is not going to be bad. A little bit more movement normally helps. And then I say normally because, of course, for some people, more movement is not going to help. If someone has been overtraining or someone is hyper lax and I'm going to give them more exercise or more movement, that's not going to help. Good example, me right now with my ankle. If I would start jumping around, is that better? Of course not. So we have to go depending on your own situation. But as a good general rule of thumb, I like to use movement as an additional solution. Meaning, if you have pain normally, I'm going to include some type of movement in the regime, in the strategies. And that's important to comprehend, because most people, when they feel pain, they decide to do the complete opposite. They decide to stop moving. And I think that's a poor judgment of the situation. I'm going to use those words because using movement as a way to treat, even if it's done in a very small increment and it's progressive, it doesn't only affect the biology, meaning it's not only the effect per se of the movement on your range of motion, on your flexibility, or on the mechanical part of it, but it's also the effect on your mind and on your confidence that you can use your body, even if you have pain. Remember, I've been saying that in a couple of episodes now. Being hurt and being harmed are two different things. Of course, if you are harmed, if there is tissue damage, and if you keep moving, the more it hurts, well, now you have to dial down the movement and even maybe completely stop. But if you are hurt, and most of us, when we are in pain, we are hurt, especially with chronic pain, because it has been shown that over a certain period of time, I believe it is over a couple of months, if the pain is not progressing, meaning that the level doesn't get worse and worse, it's kind of steady, and you've been having that for more than a few months, there is a very high chance that there is no tissue damage to wherever it hurts. So, for example, for someone who's been having low back pain for 6 months and it's been kind of steady, sometime up, sometime down, there is a high chance that that person is hurt, meaning they feel pain, but there's no tissue damage. And in that specific situation, I would recommend to add more movement. Now, any movement? No, of course. And it would be impossible for me to say on this one episode, do this exact movement, because everybody needs a specific movement pattern for their specific situation. But as a good rule of thumb, I would say that if you add some walking, if you add some gentle movement, some mobility training, maybe some low impact like bicycle or swimming, normally speaking, I would give that a try at first and see how you react. That's why I use that very low hanging fruit strategy at first and see, hey, let's get your body moving a little bit more. Don't go crazy. If you are not doing anything right now, don't go 4 times a week. Perhaps you try 1 time a week, 20 minutes a day, something very little that you can implement and have more consistency over intensity. Remember, the effect of movement on your health and on treating pain is especially accomplished if you're able to sustain that movement over a long period of time, because movement is going to help you be more resilient and to build this strength and to build this capacity of your body to be flexible, to be mobile, to be strong, whatever skill you want to work. But for that, you need adaptation. And who says adaptation means stimuli over a long period of time. So the more you're able to hold this consistency, the better, I believe, in my opinion, the results are going to be. All right, so we've been talking for some time now, or I have been talking with some time, but just to wrap up here, if you want to use movement and other strategies to prevent, you want to be as resilient as possible using general health recommendation, good sleep, 7 to 9 hours, where you feel rested. You want to manage your stress, eat close to nature and limit processed food. Doesn't mean you have to avoid them completely, just limit. Have a great social life, spend some time with some friends, have something that you feel that you have a purpose for. All of those things, they're amazing, but also we've been repeating them so many times. I think that you know them by now. Not only that, but you can use movement also to prevent. So just being overly active, not overly, but generally active. So doing some light cardiovascular exercise for longer periods of time, and also using exercises for developing mobility and flexibility. Those are a great way to allow your body to be stronger in a wider range of motion. Okay, that's great for prevention. And then if you want to treat pain, if you've been having a surgery and an injury, then first of all, plan your mindset, plan how you're going to organize this rehabilitation of yours, this movement strategies. Work on especially those thoughts, those beliefs, how you're going to approach this, the questions you're going to ask yourself to be more empowered and not a victim. And then after that, you might want to use movement at your own advantage. So depending on especially what you need, of course, that's going to require the supervision of a professional, but perhaps you will need some strength training. Perhaps you will use some mobility exercise to work either on, yes, your mobility, your posture, your range of motion, your flexibility. There's a lot of things here because, of course, it depends on the injury that you have, and it also depends on your specific situation. And I will finish by saying that as a general rule of thumb, if you've been having some pain now for some time, there's a good chance that there is no tissue damage. So you can try to increase a little bit your level of movement. Don't go super hard, super fast, go progressive and see how this feels. So for you, if it's important that you would like to go for a run for about 40 minutes, but right now you only run 10 minutes, well, maybe you can, even if you have pain, that's important. Even if you have pain, build this tolerance towards pain. You can feel discomfort. That's okay. It is okay to feel discomfort. But as long as the pain is not overtaking, and as long as the pain doesn't get worse, and that you did not have like a specific trauma, let's say example like my own ankle here, well, in that case, I would say that's a great way to start your rehabilitation, and how to use movement to treat your pain is to make yourself more resilient by using it a little bit and building on that until you can reach the point where your capacity of being resilient, right? Your capacity to endure is going to be increased, and perhaps at that time you're not even going to feel pain. I hope you learned. I hope that you learned something today, and I hope that you are going to use one or many of those tools if you want to prevent pain, and also if you want to treat it if unfortunately you are suffering from pain right now or an injury. On that note, I wish you a great week, and I will see you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Internal Compass Podcast.